Welcome to the Popcorn Junkies! Hey, we're back. This is a review of Ali and Ava that's being released on the same day as The Batman. So clearly appealing to a completely different audience, which is kind of clever because I think there's going to be a lot of people who don't fancy superhero fodder. This is a film by Clio Barnard, who made what was one of my favourite films, or it is one of my favourite films, The Selfish Giant, which was about two young boys who were sort of earning a crust by scrap dealing, weren't they? It was like sort of Kes.
Yeah, it was. And it was all sort of set. They'd got a horse and cart. There always seem to be horse and carts in her films.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you haven't seen it, guys, The Selfish Giant really is worth checking out. It's quite astonishing performances in it. So, you know, she's an intriguing director. She's British. And this is called Ali and Ava. When I first heard about this film, I really didn't like the title. I don't know why. It felt sort of a bit obvious, but
I thought it was a Hollywood film and Ava was Ava Gardner, and I was thinking, who's the man?
Oh right. Well, it stars Adeel Akhtar and Claire Rushbrook.
We know the guy, don't we?
Well, Adeel Akhtar came to prominence really as the guy who blows up in Four Lions. Was he with a crow or was he with a pig?
I don't know,
or something?
but he gets in bits by the end of it.
I mean, he's a comic actor. He pops up in a lot of things. He's always in a sort of supporting role, though, isn't he?
He is.
He's got such a sweet face.
He's very watchable. Yeah, very watchable.
And Claire Rushbrook, who I had a little look around what she's been in, and she's
been in?
Well, she's what? This always sounds like it's a sort of negative thing, but she's a jobbing actress. She's been in lots. She had a recurring role in Whitechapel, the drama. She was in Mike Lee's Secret and Lies.
Yes.
So what is this about? This is a love story.
It is.
Set in Bradford, which is Clio Barnard's kind of preferred location, as I read in the interview. And it's a kind of unlikely love story in that, you know, Claire Rushbrook is a woman who's survived a relationship that's blighted by domestic abuse. She has a son living with her who's had a baby, so she's a grandmother.
She's a grandmother several times.
That's right. She's got two daughters, one who lives away and another one with bipolar upstairs. And Adeel Akhtar is in, obviously, an arranged marriage, but tragically they're not in love.
No, which, as we get given bits of the story bit by bit, I mean, it is tragic, isn't it, that they wanted a baby or had, you know, got so far with having a baby and then it went wrong. And it all seems to have stemmed from that.
Yeah, and it's the way in which these two characters orbit around each other. So Adeel Akhtar, I couldn't quite work out what his job was. I mean,
he's actually a landlord.
He is a landlord.
But unlike most landlords you've ever met in your life, he's
nice.
a friendly landlord.
He's nice. And whilst he's collecting the rent from one of his tenants, he takes the tenant's child into school because she doesn't want to go to school. And in the process, his paths cross with Claire Rushbrook, who's a
teaching assistant.
She stresses that she's a teaching assistant.
That's so real, that sort of observation.
And really, I mean, the film isn't more complicated than they briefly get to know each other. They connect over music.
Which I thought was a fantastic thing, because so often, I mean, I'm always saying about how amazing young people, like the girls' age, how important music is to them. But in this case, these are both two middle-aged people who've had kids and more kids, like their grandkids, but still love music.
Absolutely.
And so connect over
and she's very much into country music, and he's very much into sort of dance/Bhangra kind of music. There's often a shot of him in sort of twilight dancing on the top of a car.
With mist and
with
stuff
mist
around
and music just kind of going. Almost like this was his... I felt like this was almost within the arranged marriage, because he's maintaining the myth of this arranged marriage to his family. So his family aren't aware that there's been a breakdown in their relationship. They don't sleep in the same room, they don't sleep together. She's making moves to leave him. He wants to delay when they tell his family. And I thought it was really... She doesn't use a heavy hand, the director, and all this stuff.
I mean, we're told an awful lot from neighbours and people like gossip and stuff like that, which is exactly how it would be, isn't it? You know, sort of people's disapproval in one way, even at the school gate and whatever. And Claire Rushmore, is it? Rushbrook. He sort of has to sort of... keep on good terms with all the mothers and everything. I mean,
And it's very much about, I mean, there's a white Asian conflict, and that conflict principally revolves around Claire Rushbrook's son.
Who apparently, did you
it's the younger son, is one of the boys in The Selfish Giant.
I was amazed at that,
because there's a scene where Adeel goes back to her house, and I thought it was a beautiful scene where they're both listening to each other's music and their own music on, I guess, on their iPhones. And it would cut between what they were listening to the awfulness of them singing to it. This noise. It's that thing of when you're listening to music, you think you sound as good as the person you're listening to, but in reality it's like... I thought it was a really sweet scene. And then her son walks into this, and in no uncertain terms, he pulls a scimitar off his wall and threatens to kill him.
Yeah.
I mean, it's quite dramatic.
It is very dramatic, but dealt with beautifully because Adeel sort of says, I mean, he makes it is funny in a way, you know, I'm not coming back if he's going to have his scimitar and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Zorro, he calls him Zorro with a Z. And but the boy is brilliant in the sense of,
because he's got his own inner turmoil about his dad.
Yeah, you can tell he doesn't know what. I mean, it is mainly about his dad and this guy maybe taking the place of his dad.
Yes, exactly.
But,
and the last thing he could think of is that his dad's going to be replaced by someone of an Asian background.
Yeah. I mean, beautifully portrayed and beautifully written, actually.
I thought it was really important that Adeel lent on, or the Ali in the title, lent on a huge sense of humour. There were many scenes that would have been dangerously close to sort of falling into not poverty porn, but do you know what I mean? I was worried it was going to go that way, but actually he wasn't put upon, even though his circumstances were horrible, essentially.
Yes.
He had a great sort of verve for life. He was driven by his music. He obviously had some form of ADHD.
He was troubled, he was very troubled.
Yeah.
But in a sort of, I'm going to do something about it literally, but I'm going to fill my life with all these things that I love.
Yeah.
And
he didn't accept the limitations of what he had. He was reaching beyond it.
Yeah.
And I think I think this is a beautiful love story.
It is.
It really is beautiful, and I think it's made more beautiful because it's parked in a really ordinary, everyday, working class environment where normally all we're shown are stories of blight, of violence, though there's some in it, kind of suggested, misery, struggle, not, you know, and all those things are real, but it was really refreshing that within that sort of landscape we had a love story. Yeah,
and also I would say, wouldn't you, that all the interior shots when we're either in their house or somebody else's house or flat or whatever, is that under some circumstances, it's like you say, at the beginning I was thinking, I hope this doesn't just turn into a poverty porn type exercise. There was no judgment. There was never any judgment implied about the home situation. It was just people were either warm or not warm. Or...
Well, no judgment was made about the boy with the scimitar who was clearly a racist, because you understood that he was coming from he was as culturally embedded in his prejudice as Ali's family were, in terms of, you know, because there was that moment where he was in a cafe with Claire, with Ava, and his niece walks in and sees him. And, you know, it's the big no-no. He's having lunch or a coffee with a white woman. So you felt the limitations of both sides of the equation. We won't give away the ending, but I really liked the ending. I thought it was counterintuitive. I wasn't quite expecting the ending that we got.
No, I loved the ending too.
But in terms of directing, there's something about the way this woman directs that is so... She manages to pull off almost an impossible act, which is, it's very real. So you feel it nudges towards documentarist. And yet it's incredibly poetic.
I would agree exactly with that.
I mean, like, you know,
I've got to take this off.
There isn't much dialogue in it. There are huge scenes, which is just them looking. And I thought Claire Rushbrook was so powerful.
Wasn't she?
That thing of being a woman of a certain age, the fear that perhaps she would never, or the acceptance that she would never hook up with someone again. The fact that she does.
It's almost like I felt, you know, the first quarter or first half of the film, almost as if the director had kept the two actors apart and then put them together, and there was a huge mutual sort of thing going on, because you felt like it was really, absolutely real. So the admiration in her eye, I mean, often Claire Rushbrook, you can just see it in her eyes that she's starting to think, I really like this guy. And he's all the time, his humour, which is brilliant, is sort of deflecting potentially difficult situations. But you can see the odd time he shuts up for a minute and you sort of get him looking, you can see it's all going on with him as well.
And I just thought it was magically done, a little like The Selfish Giant. You sort of think, okay, well, this is the story of boys, this is the story of a couple in Bradford kind of hooking up, and will they, won't they? But in everything that wasn't said, she's got such a tender way of filming things. She knows how long to let a scene last. She knows the silences to let it. And she has really sort of abstract moments where shots will just show extreme close-ups of what would be ordinary things. And it makes them quite sort of extraordinary, doesn't it?
No, I absolutely agree. I mean, nothing is sort of expected, although, you know, she sort of wrong foots our expectations, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say. So what she's interested in is the emotion and the sort of bigger picture. And in both their eyes, you could see a growing, you know, affection and love for both.
Well, and I think that's what this film does. I mean, for me, this film confounds expectations. I think it allows you, you know, in microcosm, everyone is allowed to fall in love, and I thought this film was about that. You know, even a woman who's come out of a domestic abusive relationship, she's of a certain age where most women of her age, mid-50s, would assume that they're not going to meet anyone else. So I felt the hope and the surprise of how much she felt in a woman that never thought she'd have that again.
Yeah.
I also saw in his eyes the expectation or the disbelief that it would be a white woman in a sense that he fell in love with. And I mean, there was that wonderful line from someone who said, it was the line from her daughter who said to her, you know, he'll see you as a slapper.
Yeah.
He won't see you as a woman worth staying with.
Yeah.
And that kind of parked a certain sort of doubt.
Yeah.
So there was kind of jeopardy in there. There really was jeopardy in there, because then there's the moment where has he reunited with his wife?
Yeah, the last quarter of the film is
it's
jeopardy.
will they, won't they? So and again, it's light stroke. It's a real love story, and I was really, really surprised.
Yeah.
In summary, I would say this is a really tender, really low key, beautifully acted, sensitively shot,
real as well. I mean,
very
real
real.
is an overused word, but in this sense, it really is
a really authentic love story. You couldn't help but feel that the actors fell a little bit in love with each other in real life.
Exactly.
I think that's what you're driving at. It was very real. All the supporting cast very real. I think, you know, many of the supporting cast were just real people from real life.
Yeah.
But that didn't jar. You didn't feel nothing. What I love about the director is in none of her films yet is she trying to impose the idea that she's a director. It's almost like she's there just facilitating a reality that perhaps, okay, she's created, but she lets it flow in front of the camera.
Yeah. And also in her writing, and I've said this already, but just to reinforce it, there is no judgment. And once you take judgment out of it, you can present people like, yes, there were some racist people, both ways racist, you know. And she shows that, but she doesn't sort of make it the central thing. It's just there, and it doesn't affect what we feel about the main two characters.
There's no moral statement.
No.
There's no,
which
you're
is
absolutely
very
right.
unusual. I mean, I'm sure one of the reasons that I came out feeling light-hearted and feeling that was amazingly sort of not cheerful, whatever the word is.
Life-affirming.
Life-affirming was that she makes no judgments. And unless we do that, we can't sort of move forward.
No. So I would say, if you don't fancy The Batman, which we're going to be seeing in review, this is a brilliant film to go and see. You will be charmed by it. It's a charming film, it really is, with charming performances and a director who's not interested in putting her sort of directorial stamp on it. She just wants to allow it to breathe and to be. I'd give this a stonking 100 out of 100. I thought it was a cracking film. I didn't feel there was anything wrong with it, apart from the title. I don't know why. I've got a problem with the title.
I quite like the title in the end, in the sense that it summed up the whole film.
It's Ron Seal.
Yeah, exactly. I like the way just something just came to me, is that, you know, over the music, which we can't sort of stress how important that was, because they both sort of and he said very early on, which was very funny in the car, and it's in the trailer, oh God, if you like country music, then that's the end of us, you know. And she sort of doesn't know she doesn't know him very well at that stage. But by the end of it, she's sort of picking out Bob Dylan tunes. And that is what happens in life, is that people that you admire and respect or love, you start to...
They rub off on you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is done with no big sort of... I'm
cliche.
telling you this.
There's no cliche in there either.
It's just presented. Yeah. And the actors are stunning, absolutely stunning.
And on that note, there's an interesting aspect to the soundtrack, away from the songs, is there's this kind of, what in any other terms you'd describe as slightly menacing hum. Yeah. And I think that did a good job of just elevating the will they, won't they to a higher level of could something more serious happen? Yeah. Could this really explode, perhaps around her son or something? You know, is this going to get really tricky?
That was well used, because that's used a lot in films these days. And
it made it sort of have a simmering.
Yeah, it was used just enough.
Just the right amount.
Yeah. I mean, I would give it. I mean, I'd be picking holes to say 98. I'll give it 100 too. I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah, it really was. It completely confounded me. We went in, I don't know what I was expecting when I went in, but I came out with a totally different sense of what it was.
Yeah, she's a brilliant director.
She really is. Clio Barnard.
For more film and family fun, don't forget to click the subscribe button and make sure to click the bell to never miss an update.